The twin moons of Amelara still glowed on the horizon when Lyra Vey left her stone-roofed home. Fresh morning mist curled around her ankles while she walked toward the high plaza where the yearly choosing ceremony would start. Lyra was only 18, cycles old. Yet today the elders would invite every unmarried male of her city to step forward and accept or refuse her as a future mate. The custom was older than any written book. For most young women it was a joyful hour, full of music, flowers, and proud families. Lyra's heart, however, beat with quiet fear. Silver lines, delicate empathic markings, ran across her violet skin like moonlit rivers. Those marks let her feel the strong emotions of others, but they were rare and often misunderstood. Many elders whispered that silver lines meant weakness, because deep feelings could distract a scientist, warrior, or leader. Lyra believed the marks were a gift, yet the city spoke with another voice. In the plaza, a wide circle of polished stone waited. Lanterns swung from carved arches and painted banners fluttered overhead. Families stood in bright clothing, and musicians tuned red pipes. The elder speaker, a tall woman with a staff of crystal, raised her hand. "Let the first presentation begin," she declared. Lyra stepped into the circle alone, her sandals tapping on the stone. She bowed, as the law demanded, and lifted her chin so everyone could see her face clearly. One by one, the young men of her generation entered from the opposite side. There were 24 of them, wearing blue sashes across their chests. 8. Male paused in front of Lyra, placed a hand on his own heart, and made his choice. The first looked at her silver lines and shook his head. "I refuse," he said, voice steady but eyes uneasy. The second did the same. The third did not even. "Look at her," he turned away before words formed. The pattern continued. By the time the 10th suitor refused, whispers rolled across the crowd like restless wind. Lyra kept her back straight, though her throat grew tight. She focused on the rhythm of her breathing. The final suitor, a shy botanist named Kale, stepped forward last. For a moment, hope flickered inside her. Kale and Lyra had exchanged research notes many times at the academy, yet even he bowed an apology. "Forgive me," he whispered. "Right. The council wants stronger lines for the next age." He left the circle without lifting his gaze. The elder speaker hit the stone floor once with her staff. The clear sound meant the ceremony had ended. No mate had been found. A hush fell. Some citizens stared at Lyra with plain pity, others with silent judgment. Parents called their children back, as if shame were a sickness that could spread. Lyra's mother, Mira, hurried forward and tried to place a comforting shawl over her daughter's shoulders. Lyra accepted the shawl but shook her head at the soft words. "I will be fine, mother," she said in a low, calm tone. The silver lines on her cheeks pulsed in slow waves, mirroring the swirl of strong feelings inside her. She kissed her mother's hand, then walked out of the plaza without waiting for further talk. The city's north gate opened onto rolling green hills, and beyond them, the famous cloud forests of Amelara. Lyra headed there alone, carrying a small field pack of tool-sample jars, a scanning lens, and a data tablet. She reminded herself that plants and rocks did not judge, they only existed. Research would quiet her mind. The path climbed between tall glass-leaf trees, whose trunks shimmered like polished jade. Soft, feathered creatures sang from hidden branches. Now and then, Lyra paused to note soil color, air humidity, or a new fungal bloom. When the sun reached its noon peak, she arrived at Riverglass Station, her personal outpost, and hurt. She felt small, yes, but also brave. Whether the newcomer was friend or threat, she would meet it not as a rejected girl, but as a scientist ready to learn. Gathering a fresh data pad and a portable lantern, she prepared to trek toward the unknown. Landing site at first light, night settled, stars wheeled overhead, and the river below sang on like clear glass bells. In that song, Lyra heard a promise. Every end is only the start of a new path. The first pale light of dawn brushed Amalera's cloud forests when the deep hum of engines rolled across the valley. Lyra Vey, already awake, paused on a ridge trail. A silver craft sliced low through pink clouds, glowing vents on its wings. It was no Amaloran air skimmer. Her mind raced. Off-world visitors are real. The vessel angled toward the flat meadows east of the city.
Ira lifted a recording lens,
Zoomed, and captured shaky frames. Symbols on the hull showed a blue sphere with green lands, surely the sign of Earth. The distant Terran homeworld she had only studied in historic scrolls. I must see this with my eyes, she thought. She hurried back to Riverglass Station, packed extra food cubes, and set off down the forest track that curved toward the eastern plain. By mid-morning, the meadow near the city's edge was full of watchers. Amaloran guards dressed in polished seed fiber armor formed a wide ring around the newcomer craft. Children peeked between adults. Merchants left stalls half open to stare. Even the elders stood at a safe distance, staffs gleaming. A ramp unfolded from the vessel's side with a soft hiss. First to appear was a tall human in a white explorer jacket. His brown hair caught the wind. A light visor shaded his eyes. He walked down the ramp with open hands, palms out, no weapon. Smooth voice device on his collar carried his words. Across the field in careful trade speech, "Greetings to the sovereign world of Amelara," he said. "I am Evan Brooks, diplomatic officer of the Terran expedition ship Odyssey. We come in peace, seeking knowledge and friendship." The elder speaker, still holding the same crystal staff from Lyra's ceremony, stepped forward 3 paces. "Amelara hears you, Evan Brooks," she answered, light, yet cool. "Land here is sacred. Land here is sacred. Tell us why you cross our sky without call." Evan bowed low. "Our charts showed no recent come beacon from your orbit. We meant no insult. Our goal is to map safe passages, study your life forms, and trade science. We asked permission to stay a short while." Hush fell. Amalorans valued self-reliance and rarely allowed long visits. But curiosity tugged at their hearts. After a pause, the speaker nodded once. "You and a small party may remain. Obey our guides. Share your steps with our watchers." Relief touched Evan's face. Behind him, 2 other humans moved equipment. Down the ramp, sensor crates, solar tents, and small sample pods. Evan thanked the speaker and began setting up a temporary base near the meadow's edge. Lyra watched from behind a flower tree. The silver lines on her skin flickered with mixed feelings, excitement, worry, and a slice of hope she could not name. Though the crowd pressed close, nobody noticed her. After yesterday's refusal, most still avoided eye contact. She felt invisibilant, till Evan's eyes lifted and met hers across the open space. For a heartbeat, they simply looked at one another. A human stranger and a marked Amaloran scientist. Then chatter rose, breaking the moment. Lyra stepped back into the shade. That afternoon, Evan toured the city's central market with an assigned escort. The market bustled with bright cloth, floating perfume globes, and spice cakes sizzling on hot stones. Evan stopped often, scanning each new fruit or metal carving with a handheld tool. Data scrolled on his wrist, yet something weighed on his mind. A key biosensor in the Odyssey's lab module had burned out during landing. Without that part, the crew could not safely test unfamiliar plants, too risky for allergy shock. Replacement components were sealed inside Terran crates. But a rare reagent, Tritry's filtrate, was missing. Evan asked the escort, "Does anyone in your city handle Tritry's algae?" The guards exchanged looks. One replied that algae grows only in the upper river gorge. Reclusive researcher keeps samples there. Name is Lyra Vey. The girl from the field, Evan realized. He thanked them and requested a map. The guards agreed to guide him the next morning. Night came early under twin moons. At Riverglass Station, Lyra loaded her day's notes into a hala file. She thought of the human's brief gaze. It had held no judgment. Still, she doubted he would search for someone tagged unworthy by every suitor. A notification chimed on her console message from City Watch. Terran envoy requests audience regarding Trickery's supply. Sunrise arrival. Lyra's pulse jumped. She paced the narrow platform. Should I accept? If she refused, the council might blame her for blocking trade. If she aided, she risked fresh gossip. Yet her scientist spirit flared at the chance to compare Terran tech with her. IO-threads. She sent one short line. Access granted. Coordinates attached. At first light, Evan and two guards hiked the switchback trail by the Crystal River. Mist rose from chasms where water roared. Evan's boots slipped on dew-slick stone, but he smiled at every bird call, echoing across the gorge. When the trio reached the station gantry, Lyra waited beside a rack of glowing algae tubes. She wore a field coat dotted with leaf stains, silver, lines dim under morning cloud. She greeted the guards with a formal bow and turned to Evan. "Welcome, Diplomat Brooks," she said, voice steady. "You need Trickery's filtrate." Evan grinned. "Yes, our medical lab depends on it. This place is amazing." He gestured at hanging vines that shimmered like spun glass. "May I see how you harvest?" Lyra nodded. For the next hour she guided him through the process, teasing strands of algae from river edge rocks, pulsing them with soft light to release the filtrate, then sealing bright drops inside clear vials. Evan recorded every motion, asking gentle questions, always careful, always respectful. At one point, Lyra slipped on a wet plank. Instinctively, Evan reached out and steadied her by the elbow. The touch was brief yet kind. Nothing more. Still, a warm wave rippled along her empathic markings. No shock or disgust followed. Evan simply smiled, checking she was all right, then let go. They worked until 10 vials sat packed in a foam case. Evan offered a data stick and trade full of stellar navigation charts. Lyra accepted. New maps could help her tag migration patterns of skyfish. "Thank you, Lyra," Evan said as he closed the case. "This small gift may save our crew from illness." "You are welcome," she replied. And for the first time since her public rejection, genuine pride filled her chest. Knowledge had value, as valued as Evan slung the supply bag over his shoulder. Dark rain clouds rolled in from the north. Distant thunder rumbled. Lyra looked toward the horizon. Storms here were sudden and fierce. She frowned. Power lines to her station were fragile. Evan noticed trouble. "Possibly," she said. "The shield grid fails sometimes. If it breaks during heavy rain, the gorge floods." He glanced at the slim posts supporting power nacelles. "Can those lines handle lightning?" "Not well." Evan set the supply case down. "Then let's reinforce them together before the sky opens." Lyra met his eyes, surprised. In them she saw only calm resolve and an unspoken promise of teamwork. Outside, wind whipped the mist into spinning ghosts. Inside her heart, a quiet thought bloomed. Maybe. One respectful gesture can change more than a ceremony ever could. The first heavy drops of rain drummed on the roof of Riverglass Station while Lyra and Evan hurried along the narrow catwalk. The gorge below howled as wind whipped the clear water into white spray. Power posts along the rim trembled with each lightning flash. Lyra's stomach clenched. If the posts fell, the station's shield grid would die and the river could swallow. The whole platform, Evan knelt beside the nearest post and pulled a coil of carbon fiber rope from his pack. "We lash the high points first," he said, voice raised over the storm. "Then I splice a ground line so lightning flows into bedrock, not the grid." Lyra nodded and slid a toolkit to him. Her silver empathic markings glimmered in cool pulses, echoing the tension around them. "I will anchor the far post," she answered. "The soil is softer there." They worked fast. Rain soaked through Evan's jacket. Lyra's violet hair clung to her cheeks, yet neither slowed. When he finished the splice, Evan glanced toward the laboratory shack perched over the canyon. "Next, secure your data tablets," he shouted. "Wind keeps climbing." Lyra ran inside the shack. Shelves shook. Jars rattled. She grabbed a stack of thin crystal tablets loaded with years of notes. As she turned, a violent gust slammed. The door opened. The tablets flew from her arms, spinning like silver birds straight toward the open porch and the abyss beyond. "No." Lyra lunged after them. One foot slipped on wet floorboards and she pitched forward. In that instant, Evan burst through the threshold. Died. He caught her wrist, stopping her fall. The tablets whirled out into the rain. One struck a roof beam and clattered to the deck. cracking but not shattering. 2 lighter tablets kept sailing, vanishing into the roaring chasm. Lyra's breath hitched. She stared at the empty space where her research had disappeared, then at Evan's hand still gripping her wrist. In Amaloran custom, sudden touch between unmarried adults was almost never seen. The rules were clear: hands off, eyes lowered, distance kept. Yet Evan's grasp was gentle, steady, full of wordless concern. Her silver markings flared bright, reflecting the avalanche of feelings inside her: shock, loss, gratitude, and an odd rising warmth she could not name. Instinct told her to pull away before shame followed, but Evan did not flinch or look disgusted. He just searched her face, rain pouring down his own, and asked quietly, "Are you hurt?" I am safe," she managed. Her voice shook more from emotion than cold. The markings dimmed to a calmer glow. Evan released her and crouched too. "Pick up the cracked tablet." "Still readable," he said. "You can back it up on my ship's servers." Lyra exhaled. "The others are gone," she whispered. "We'll find them when the river calms," he replied. "Till then, let's protect what remains." He handed her the cracked tablet as if it were priceless crystal, which to her it was. Together, they stowed the surviving data in a sealed locker. Evan rigged extra straps across the cabinet doors. Outside, thunder boomed like war drums, but the shield grid now, bolstered by Evan's ground, line held steady. Green flashes arced safely into the wet stone cliff, them simple as breathing. His words carried no judgment, only honest certainty. The warmth in Lyra's chest returned, brighter now. "Perhaps simple things are strongest," she murmured. Outside, a low whistle rose from the path. 2 Amaloran traders approached, cloaks dripping. They had come to check the station after the storm and carried bundles of fresh fiber rope as gifts. When they saw Evan seated comfortably inside, talking with Lyra, their eyes widened. One trader hurried back down the path, cloak flapping. Gossip would fly faster than any river spray. Evan noticed the sudden tension in Lyra's shoulders. "Trouble?" she sighed. "They will tell the council that an off-worlder held my wrist, that I allowed it." She tasted bitterness. "At the truth. Let me speak for us," Evan offered. "If the council wants answers, I'll give them." Lyra shook her head. "I will not listen to a stranger, but I will not hide either. What happened, happened. If they summon me, I will say the river teaches clearer lessons than old rules." A soft beep sounded from Evan's wrist console. He checked the message and frowned. "My crew just detected abnormal magnetic shifts under these cliffs." "Good. I mean a bigger storm band tomorrow, or something worse. We'll run scans at sunrise." Lyra stood. Purpose filled her again. "Then I will help. My biothreads feel changes in underground heat vents. Together we can map the risk." She extended her hand, open palm up. Evan's smile was small but bright. He gripped her hand firmly, no stumble, and Evan smiled. "Teamwork again, then." He rolled up the screen and slipped it into his jacket. A tired sigh escaped him. In that quiet moment, relief washed over both of them, the kind that arrives after danger leaves. Without thinking, Evan opened his arms and drew Lyra into a brief hug, the friendly human way to say thank you for surviving with me. It lasted only heartbeat. Long, yet a soft gasp sounded behind them. A trader from the city, same one who had brought the gift rope, stood on the path. His eyes went wide, and his cloak swished as he spun away, almost running back toward the gate. Lyra stepped back, silver empathic markings flashing bright with alarm. "He saw," she whispered. Evan's brow furrowed. "Is that bad?" "Touch." "Between an unmarried pair is one thing," she answered, voice tight, "but an embrace is intimate. Elders will call it disgrace. Maybe worse because you are off-world." Evan exhaled slowly. "Then I'll explain." Lyra managed a small, worried smile. Reason is not always loud enough for tradition. By midday, news had raced. Through the marble streets of the city, whispering clusters formed at every fountain. The silver-marked girl let a human stranger hold her. Each retelling grew sharper, like a stone rolled in a river. Just after sunset, a council courier arrived at the station. He carried a tall scroll, sealed with crimson wax. Lyra Vey, he declared, avoiding her eyes. The High Council summons. You to answer for breach of custom. Dawn Bell, Inner Hall. He left the scroll and hurried away before she could speak. Lyra unrolled the parchment. Formal words spoke of public concern, possible danger to moral order, and required testimony. She felt her stomach twist. Evan read over her shoulder. You won't face them alone, he said. I must enter alone, she corrected gently. That is our law. Witnesses wait outside. Evan folded his arms, thinking, then I'll wait right at the door. Night deepened. Wind rattled loose shutters while Lyra sorted through sensor data, trying to calm her thoughts with numbers. Yet one fear remained loud: exile. A rejected scientist could live in the forests, yes, but never share the city's libraries or labs. Again, Evan brewed leaf tea. If worse comes, he said, there's space on the Odyssey for another researcher. The offer warmed her more than the cup. Thank you, she replied. But Amila Ra is my home. I hope to mend, not flee. Outside, the river seemed to whisper agreement. Morning bells tolled across crystal towers as Lyra walked the great plaza. She wore her clean field coat and carried no weapon, only a rolled chart of shield schematics, proof that science, not scandal, filled her days. Evan strode beside her until marble guards blocked his path. You may stand here, one guard told him, no farther. Evan's jaw tightened, but he stepped back and gave Lyra an encouraging nod. She drew a steady breath and entered the bronze doors alone. The council chamber rose in tiers like a stone nest. 12 elders sat behind carved desks. The elder speaker leaned on her crystal staff. Lyra Vey, she began, voice echoing, reports. Claim you engaged in forbidden contact with an off-world man. Do you deny? Lyra lifted her chin. I do not deny. Explorer Evan Brookstead eyed me during the storm, then greeted me with a human hug. No offense was meant. Murmurs rippled through the hall. One elder, a scholar of old law, spoke sharply. Such acts erode the discipline that holds our society together. Why should we not strip your academic rights? Lyra unrolled the shield chart on a central table. Because the next storm will strike tonight, she said, tapping a red line that showed magnetic flux rising beneath the cliffs. If we do not strengthen the grid, the city may flood. I know the biothreads required. Evan knows the Terran grounding coils that confuse with them. Together we can finish repairs before dusk. Another elder, gray-haired and stern, narrowed his eyes. And if we refuse your plan? Lyra met his gaze. Then lives may be lost. Children's, traitors alike. Tradition will not stop the river. The chamber fell silent. Outside the high windows, dark clouds already gathered on the horizon as if to underline her words. Suddenly the bronze doors burst open. Evan rushed in, ignoring startled guards. He held a portable projector that cast real-time readings in the air, swirling colors, rising spikes. Confirmed, he said, voice urgent. A geomagnetic surge 10 times yesterday's. We have maybe 8 hours. Several counselors exchanged worried looks. The elder speaker struck her staff for quiet. Discussion ends. We vote. One by one, elders pressed crystal keys. Green lights blinked. 9 for yes, 3 for no. The speaker faced Lyra. Your proposal stands. Assemble your team. The council will send workers to assist. Relief flooded Lyra's senses so strongly her markings gleamed like dawn metal. She bowed deeply. We will not fail. By early afternoon, a caravan of supply carts rolled toward River Glass Gorge. Amalon technicians carried spools of living fiber. Terran engineers unloaded crates of conductive alloy. Lyra directed the weaving of biothreads into cable sheaths, while Evan installed surge dampers along the stone ridge. Rain began to fall, light but steady, tapping helmets and 20LBOXES. High overhead, the clouds twisted, shot through with flickers of green lightning. By dusk, the valley this time, no one gasped. Instead, a low murmur of approval ran through the crew. A storm stronger than fear had just proven the value of unity. As night fully descended, The shield grid sang a quiet, steady hum over the river. Above it, a Melrose twin moons broke through cloud banks, casting silver light on two figures who now stood at the very center of a new story, one where courage mattered more than old walls. A single hug could echo across a world. Soft morning light glowed over the river gorge, turning the water pale green. Adave stood on the deck of Riverglass Station, eyes fixed on the sky. Gray bands of cloud curved like giant rings toward the horizon. Her wristpad hummed with fresh data, wind speed rising, pressure falling hard. Evan Brooks joined her, coffee flask in hand. "The next front moves faster than the models," he said. 2 hours, maybe less. Lyra's silver markings pulsed with quick concern. If the main shield fails, the river will jump its banks and rush straight into the lower town. She turned to the cluster of workers tying down crates. "We need every hand." Soon, a mixed crew of Amelaron technicians and Terran engineers formed to work teams. Team 1 would reinforce the upstream shield posts. Team 2 would guard the spillway valves that eased pressure at the ancient dam. Lyra led Team 1. She wore a new harness strung with glowing biothread coils. Living fibers that could drink charge like roots, drink rain. Evan directed Team 2, carrying a Terran toolkit no bigger than a lunchbox, yet filled with flexible alloy plates. Clouds deepened, turning day into dim twilight. Lightning crawled across the sky in green veins. As the first heavy drops fell, Lyra shouted her plan. "Anchor the coil nets around every post. When the surge hits, the coils will share the load and stop the posts from cracking." One young guard hesitated, "But those nets are alive. What if the storm kills them?" Lyra's voice stayed calm. "They grow back. We do not." Meanwhile, Lyra felt the net under her gloves grow warm. A surge raced down the power line, but the living fibers drank it, glowing soft gold. The post held. She moved to the next beam when a deafening crack split the air. The center post, still unnetted, tilted. Cables screamed. If it fell, the shield would tear wide open. Lyra shouted to her crew, "The rope cranes wing me over." They balked. The wind was wild. One shook his head. Too dangerous. "No time," she called, clipping her harness to the crane hook herself. The operator swallowed fear and cranked the winch. The hook swung out into space. Rain blurred the world. Lyra dangled over roaring water, silver lines blazing bright, and landed hard on the swaying post. Boots slipped. She dropped to her knees, hugging the cold metal. With numb fingers, she unreeled the last coil net and pinned it around the post. Lightning hit nearby, a blinding white sheet. Sparks flew, but the living fibers swallowed the strike. The post steadied, upright again. Cheers rose from the ridge, half lost in thunder. At the spillway tower, Evans stared at the jammed gate. Water pounded the hinges. He keyed his radio. "Lyra, I need more biothread. Metal alone won't lift this." Static hissed, then her voice answered breathless. "On the way?" Minutes later, she reached him, clothes soaked, coil net draped across her shoulders like a glowing cape. Without a word, they knelt together, weaving living fiber through the gate's hinge. Evan fixed the Terran plates on top. "Ready," he said. They pushed. The gate shuddered, fought them, then swung free. A roar of water exploded into the release channel, lowering the reservoir at last. Relief washed through every watcher along the dam. The shield grid hummed steady. The city lights below flickered but stayed bright. The storm thundered for 3 more hours, but the defenses held. When the final clouds drifted south, orange dusk fell on a scene of soaked heroes, bowed but unbroken. Night fires burned along the ridge as crews shared hot soup from wide kettles. Families from the city had hiked up with blankets and dry cloaks. Murmurs of admiration floated everywhere. "Did you see her drop from the crane?" The off-world plate saved the valve. Together, they turned the storm aside. For Lyra, praise felt strange after years of whispers. She sat on a low bench, sipping broth. Evan stood nearby, rolling his stiff shoulders. A group of young children approached, eyes wide. One little boy held out a small wooden carving, 2 figures side by side, arms linked. "For you," he said shyly. Lyra's throat tightened. She accepted the gift and thanked him. The silver lines on her arms glowed a soft, peaceful silver blue. Across the fire ring, Elder Speaker stepped forward, staff in hand. Her voice carried in the cool air. "Today, skill and courage met the storm as equals. Let all remember that strength wears many shapes." Heads nodded. Some of yesterday's harshest critics bowed to Lyra as they passed. Evan sat beside her. "Storm broken," he said, smiling wearily. "Storm broken," she echoed. "But look," she pointed to her wrist pad, still scrolling new data. A bright red orbit line crossed the screen. "Debris," Evan read, frown returning. "Big. An asteroid fragment," Lyra said, voice low. "Impact in 5 days if no action taken." Silence fell again, heavier than thunder. Evan straightened. "We have work to do." Lyra tucked the wooden carvings safely into her coat. Round them, the calm after the storm suddenly felt like the pause between breaths. One challenge ended, a greater one just ahead. Yet their eyes held steady courage. Together, they had faced roaring water. Together they would face falling stone. Cold dawn light rolled across Amilara's high plateau, painting the stone city in pale silver. A tense hush hung over every street. 5 days of frantic work had passed, and now only hours remained before the asteroid fragment named Iron Thorn by Terran. Scanners would slide into a collision path with the planet. At the edge of the plateau stood the Starpulse mass driver, centuries-old relic built for launching cargo pods. Its copper coils stretched 1/2 kilometer and curved like a giant bow aimed at the sky. For 2 ages, no one had fired it above training power, yet today it was Amelara's last hope. If the coils could throw a magnetic slug fast enough, the impact of that slug would nudge Ironthorn just a hair enough to miss the world by thousands of kilometers. Lyra Vey arrived before sunrise, tool belt tight around her waist, silver empathic lines dim in the chill air. She scanned the long firing rail and felt a knot of pride. All week she had guided teams who wove living bio-threads through the drivers. Old cables, turning rigid metal into a living circuit that healed tiny breaks faster than sparks could spread. Near the command hut, diplomat Evan Brooks checked figures on a portable screen. His eyes were red from little sleep, yet they lit up when he saw Lyra. "System health at 88%, he said. "Better than yesterday." "Coil field calibration still critical?" Lyra nodded. "Field drift must be below 1%, or the slug may spin off course." She hesitated, knowing what came next.
"Oh."
"The Council still wants Master Engineer Halen to lead the final calibration.
"Oh."
He insists on old methods, no biothread." Evan frowned. Old methods failed 3 times during tests. He glanced toward the city plaza, where elders prepared a formal send-off ceremony, complete with drums, banners, and long speeches. "Let's convince them again." The grand hall echoed with music when Evan and Lyra arrived. Robed elders sat on a raised platform. Citizens filled tiered seats. Master Halen, tall and stern, stood beside a hologram of the mass. Driver Evan stepped forward first, voice steady. "Honored Council, we respect tradition, but time is thinner than paper. Lyra's living thread upgrade cut energy loss in half. She must guide the coil calibration." Omega stabilized. She whispered into her headset. Outside, gauges flipped from red to amber, then to green. Cheers burst across the rail. Evan triggered the main charge sequence, capacitors filled with white fire. Lyra emerged, face smudged, hair smoking at the tips. Evan caught her shoulders, steadying her. No one flinched at the contact. Everyone simply nodded respect. Final countdown began. 10, 9, 8. Copper coils roared like chained thunder. The ground shook. Lyra and Evan stood side by side. On the observation deck, safety glass trembling before their eyes. 3, 2, 1 fire. Blinding spear of magnetic force slammed through the slug. It vanished in a flash, punching skyward at 15 kilometers per second. Shockwaves rattled. Windows across the plateau. Data screens tracked its climb. 80 kilometers, 100, 200, then out into dark space. Perfectly on vector minutes stretched like hours. Then a single line of text appeared on every console. Trajectory deviation, achieved iron. Thorn will miss Amila by 12,000 kilometers. For one long heartbeat, no one spoke. Then the plateau erupted in joy shouts, tears, laughter. Master Halen hoisted Lyra's wrist high. Workers cheered her name. Evan's crew chanted Terran victory songs. Lyra's silver markings shimmered like quiet stars. She looked at Evan. "All hands, one heart," she said softly. "Always," he replied. "High above." The first evening stars blinked into view, safe, steady, alive. Yet the day's trials were not done. Tomorrow, the council would meet again to judge Lyra's breach of custom once and for all. But tonight, under a sky no longer threatened by falling stone, the people of Amelara celebrated the union of old roots and new wingsa, living promise that together they could turn aside even the cold hand of space. Morning light warmed the stone roofs of Amelara's capital as crowds flowed toward the grand plaza. Banners of violet and blue drifted on a calm breeze, a quiet breeze. It whispered of safety now that Iron Thorn had sailed past the planet by 12,000 kilometers. Yet a different tension filled the air. The High Council would issue its final judgment on Lyra Vey. Evan Brooks walked beside Lyra along the wide marble road. The Terran diplomat wore a fresh white jacket. Lyra carried a thin satchel of data. Tablets. Her silver empathic markings glowing with steady, gentle light. Citizens stepped back to let them pass, no longer out of fear or gossip, but out of respect. Some even offered small bows. Children pointed and smiled, excited to see the pair who had saved the world. At the plaza gate, guards opened the bronze doors without a word. Inside, the huge chamber buzzed with whispered hopes. 12 elders sat upon a crescent dais, crystal nameplates catching sunbeams. The elder speaker lifted her staff, and silence fell like snow. "Lyra Vey," the speaker began, "this council meets to conclude the inquiry into your conduct that broke ancient custom, yet also guided Amelara through storm and skyfire. We will hear the final report before our vote." She gestured toward a lecture stand. Lyra stepped forward, heart thumping but voice calm. "Honored elders, citizens, and friends," she said, projecting her words so even those in the balconies could hear, "I present the record of our joint actions." She tapped a tablet. Holograms bloomed above the stand, images of shield posts glowing gold, the mass driver's blue arcs, the asteroid's red path curving safely away. "We achieved these victories together," she continued. "Living biothreads, Terran alloy plates, steady arms, quick minds, none alone was enough. Custom guided us in many good ways for ages, but yesterday, cooperation beyond custom saved our world." Master Engineer Halen rose from the second. Rowan spoke without anger. "Her data are correct. Without the living upgrade, the driver coil would have failed. Without the Terran actuators, spillway gates would have jammed. Single traditions could not meet new danger." The elder speaker surveyed the listening crowd, then motioned to Evan. "Diplomat Brooks, add your testimony." Evan stood tall. "Have served on many worlds," he said, "but I have never seen courage shine brighter than it did here. Courage that reached out a hand instead of raising a wall. If a single human gesture, a simple hug, broke a rule, then perhaps the rule was too narrow for the moment history offered." Soft murmurs of agreement rippled like small waves on a lake.
Iris.
Silver markings flickered, sensing cautious hope in hundreds of hearts. The speaker tapped her staff.
"Oh."
"The council will deliberate." Curtains of shimmering light closed around the dais, hiding the elders from view. Minutes ticked away like slow drops of water. People whispered, wrung hands, stared at the floor. Evan stood very still beside Lyra. He wanted to squeeze her hand. But he waited, remembering that even new ways grow best when given room. At last, the curtain vanished. 11 elders had returned. One seat, the seat of Elder Tirak, chief guardian of strict customs, stood empty, its crystal plate dark. The speaker faced the hall. "We have reached a decision," she declared, voice clear and steady. "Lyra Vey, your acts did not harm Amilara's heart. They strengthened it. Your willingness to blend new methods with old wisdom has set an example that this council now chooses to follow. Deep breath swept the chamber. The speaker raised a fresh parchment. Therefore, the ancient rule forbidding unchosen touch between unmarried citizens is repealed. In its place, we affirm, respect is measured not by distance, but by intent. She paused while cheers bubbled up, then continued. Furthermore, you are hereby granted the title Chief Integrator of Sciences, with full freedom to develop projects with any trusted partner, Amaloran or off-world. Applause exploded, handclaps, foot stomps, musical trills. Lyra's knees wobbled. Evan steadied her gently. A guard stopped him. Hay's hand on her shoulder drew more cheers. The speaker lifted her staff one last time. Let this day mark the beginning of a new custom, that we greet friends, near and far, with open arms and open minds. She stepped from the dais and, to every watcher's astonishment, embraced Lyra in front of all. The crowd surged forward, laughing, crying, exchanging handshakes, and for the first time in living memory, warm hugs. Parents lifted children so they could see. Tech apprentices slapped Terran engineering each other, simple games of touch and trust. No one spoke of the old shame any longer. They spoke of future journeys, Errant scholars visiting Earth, Terran children climbing Cloud Forest. Trails, teams of mixed worlds repairing satellites and mapping distant comets. On Riverglass Station, lanterns glowed over calm water. The shield grid hummed softly, alive with biothread and alloy proof that living things, once connected, are stronger together. Lyra and Evan stood at the rail, looking out across the gorge. What next? Evan asked. Lyra's eyes reflected. Moonlight. Now we explore, she said, hand in hand with every world that chooses friendship. Evan opened his arms. Lyra smiled and stepped into the hug. No shock, no fear. Only a bright echo that rolled across the canyon and into a limitless sky, where new stars waited to be named by joined voices, and so a single act of kindness shared. Between strangers, rewrote a planet's story, showing once more why humanity, at its best, is worthy of every galaxy it dares to touch.